Committee will come to order. Today, the Finance Committee turns its attention to the U.S. tax code, an anti-competitive, mindlessly complicated tar pit that makes it harder to create good jobs, succeed in global markets, and nurture innovation. My view is it is long past time to drain this swamp. Because the tax code is like an ecosystem, changes in one area almost always have big effects on others. That's why tax reform has to be comprehensive. It has to include both individual and business policies. As the Finance Committee continues to drill down with hearings on tax reform, the committee today focuses on one particularly Byzantine part of the tax code that is ripe for improvement. That is how the tax code incentivizes higher education. Now, everyone understands that getting a college education is one of the surest ways to climb the economic ladder. But the skyrocketing cost of college leads to smothering loads of student loan debt. And in fact, as we'll learn, even has the effect of reinforcing inequality in America. In its debate over education costs, the Congress has put a good deal of focus on how to make students' enormous debts more manageable. Today, the Finance Committee is going to come at this from a different angle, one that is central to any effort to help struggling families and reinvigorate the middle class. I want to focus today on policies that will mean students have less debt from the start. The crazy quilt of tax benefits and aid programs on the books today doesn't get that job done. As a result, there are millions of Americans who want to get a college degree but can't. It now takes at least 36 calculations for a family to navigate the overwhelming web of tax incentives for higher education in the tax code today. Each of those tax incentives has its own definition of qualified expenses, student eligibility, and income thresholds. Students and parents should not be expected in America to wade through a mess like this. The Finance Committee can make the menu simple. Get it down to 3 credits or deductions that are user-friendly and get our students the help they need. The improved system ought to be based on a handful of key goals: saving, covering costs, and easing the burden of loans. For one, education tax incentives cannot be allowed to drive inequality the way they do in today's flawed tax code. In 2011, families with incomes under $25,000 got an average of $930 in education tax credits. But families with much higher incomes can get a benefit nearly 3 times that size. For education to be the great equalizer in our society, then access to higher education cannot be unequal. A recent paper from the Nonprofit Corporation for Enterprise Development showed that the government's tax spending on higher education is greater than the entire discretionary budget of 9 separate federal agencies. Let's retool, colleagues, that big investment, get more value out of those dollars, and encourage more saving early in a child's life. Now, with so many families struggling to cover basics like rent and groceries, just repeating save, save, save may not be constructive. Families that start saving within a few months of a child's birth could be made eligible for an early savers break that would complement a parent's contribution so as to promote lifelong saving. Working parents of modest means who managed to save could have their savings matched through the Earned Income Tax Credit. And there are also ways to wring more value out of the tuition savings vehicles that we know as 529 plans. And auto-enrolling employees into saving plans for a youngster's college is another idea that should be examined. The fact is, there are a variety of ideas on offer to promote lifelong savings. Our colleague, Senator Schumer, has done terrific work of putting a number of proposals together. Senator Grassley has had an interest in this, Senator Santorum, Senator Gregg, Senator Dodd, and of course, President Clinton. So colleagues, we have on record a variety of approaches that are bipartisan to deal with promoting child savings. In fact, I think it's rare to say that you don't often see an idea that has this kind of support across the political spectrum. So we ought to come together and get it done. I also want to make mention of the fact that we ought to clean out the barriers that punish many families when they save. For example, if you're of modest income, one of the things you're going to do is bump up against these asset limits, and a struggling family risks losing, for example, anti-hunger assistance when they manage to put aside a little bit of money for their kids' education. Families in America shouldn't face going hungry or foregoing necessary medical care in order to help build that ethic of lifetime saving. Finally, it's important to do a better job of getting the word out about the education tax incentives. There isn't a simple college savings guide for new parents. The Higher Education Act says schools have to provide current and prospective students with a host of information on student aid programs, but nowhere does it talk about private saving or tax credits. Schools don't have to relay this information to students. So it's no wonder that a lot of students, and we're thrilled to have Amber Lee here from Oregon, who's going to tell us a very compelling story, aren't aware of all of what the opportunities are for a stellar student like herself. Colleagues, the incentives are out of whack, and on a bipartisan basis, we can change that. Finally, let me make mention of the fact that on this committee, Senator Warner, Senator Rubio, and I have introduced the Student Right to Know Before You Go Act, which would also complement reforms in the area of tax incentives, so that students would have a chance, again, students and parents, to be informed investors about what kinds of opportunities are ahead of them. We understand that some student loan debt may be unavoidable, but leaving students with significantly less debt is something this committee can accomplish. Simplifying the tax code and making education incentives more user-friendly is not just possible, it's essential. So the steps that I've outlined this morning, in my view, are common sense ones. They're ones that I believe the committee can pursue on a bipartisan basis and help students avoid taking on paralyzing amounts of debt. Today's hearing is just one of our committee's challenge in the bipartisan effort to fix America's flawed tax code. But this is an especially important one, and I'm determined to work with colleagues on both sides of the aisle on a bipartisan basis to get this right.